Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there for the last two panels of the day. This panel is about the development process of another course called Introduction to Computational Thinking with Data and Society. And it's coming out of this partnership, which you've now heard a little bit about, between Berkeley and Tuskegee University. And this slide talks about the overall various pieces of this partnership, what each of our universities is bringing to it. So, for example, as you've heard all day yesterday and this morning, there's been a lot of development of curriculum on our campus and a lot of experience with teaching data science. And on the flip side, Tuskegee is beginning to look at what's the right format for a data science program at their institution. Tuskegee brings a sense that classrooms that empower equitable and personalized learning, which is something that at Berkeley, when we have 1,000 students in a class, it's hard to achieve. And so we'd like to learn from Tuskegee around those aspects as well. And our two campuses together, we're interested in creating cross-campus community and opportunities for faculty and students to engage on research projects. We're interested in a pathway from Tuskegee to Berkeley for an advanced degree around data science. And we actually would like to be very conscious of and aware of how our partnership develops, and even thinking of it as a research opportunity in terms of what are the challenges, what are the successes, what are the key elements of a partnership between a prominent HBCU and an R1 institution. So you heard a lot about Data 8 yesterday. This is going to be about Data 6, which is this introduction to computational thinking with data in society. So it's a precursor to Data 8. And we'll be asking Suraj to give a little bit of a perspective on why we would need a precursor to Data 8, since there are no requirements aside from high school algebra for Data 8. This summer, we are working on developing a revision of Data 6 that involves the Tuskegee faculty in computer science, electrical engineering, sociology, and bioethics, as well as the statistics and computer science folks here on the Berkeley campus. And we hope to first offer it in spring of 2023 as a hybrid course with students from Berkeley and Tuskegee in that course. So this is a slightly different version of those Venn diagrams that you've seen about what is data science in terms of its context with statistics and computing. So instead, we have put data as the centerpiece of this course, or of this concept. We have computer science around the data circle, the central. We have statistics, we have context, and we have behavioral and social sciences. So Data 8 tries to accomplish all four of those. Data 6, which is why the stat part is grayed out, it drops out stat. Data 4, which you heard about in the HCE conversation, focuses on the context and behavioral and social sciences. And Data 2, which is about, I mentioned yesterday, is sort of a revamping of a statistics class that will modernize the stat class and have stat plus context. So you see, it's different combinations of those four elements. Or you can create different courses. We have 2, 4, 6, and 8 as sort of different combinations of these four pieces. All right, so yes.
Can you explain what you mean by context in that diagram versus the behavioral and social science?
Yeah, so context is the context of a specific problem. And so that might be, you're working with data. These data were collected for a specific purpose. You might be using them for that same purpose, or using them for a different purpose. And so it's understanding what the various aspects of that particular problem are, what the, if it's a scientific problem, elements of that particular discipline. Whereas the behavioral and social sciences is taking that social science lens and thinking about how would you teach about data through that lens. So we have, so it's a broader perspective, as if you would say, when I'm going to teach statistics, I have a particular perspective that I want to convey to the students around understanding variation and randomness. And so the behavioral and social science brings that perspective to the course. Yes.
So are we saying that the data 6 and data 2 is going to be the same as data 8?
No, you see how there are only 2 topics listed under data 2 and data 4, and there's 3 under data 6. So data 8 involves all 4. So these other variants have fewer, so their focus is on different aspects. And data 2, they're not ever going to learn how to program. Yes.
Wouldn't the context be a broader category that includes emphasis on disciplines such as behavioral and social sciences?
For data 6 and 4, we are not going larger than, so the idea is to focus on social science data. For data 2, they might also have physical science or biological science as well. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I would like to introduce our speakers. So I guess we'll jump around a little. Immediately to my right is Dr. Vivian Carter. She is the chair of psychology and sociology at Tuskegee University. She's also been the past associate dean for the bioethics center, and has many projects that she works on, especially in terms of equity in health. Next is Lisa Yan in the middle, so skip a little bit. Lisa, as you heard earlier today, is a teaching professor, brand new. She arrived this past semester from Stanford, and she's a teaching professor in EECS and has jumped in like into the deep end of the pool to engage with data science program here at Berkeley. And then at the very end over here, last but not least, is Suraj Rampure. He got his bachelor's and master's degree here at Berkeley. He was a teaching assistant for data 8, a head teaching assistant for data 100 when I worked with him in that capacity. And as part of his master's thesis, he was working on developing a version of data 6 as well. He's now an instructor at UC San Diego in their Data Science Institute. All right, I'm going to now start with questions. So Eric, if you want to, do I just hit escape or
Blank the screen.
blank the screen?
I got it.
This is not, oh.
Sorry.
Okay, so my first question is for Suraj. And it's, Suraj, can you take us back to the origins of data 6? What was the motivation to create this course? What was the need? And I'll ask you to come up. Yes, please.
Oh, so hey everyone. So I have to say right off the bat, working on data 6 was not my idea. It was presented to me, but I will sort of repeat the logic that went behind that. So we know that data 8 is an introductory course and it has no prerequisites. But what may be different about how data 8 or a similar course is implemented at Berkeley versus other institutions is its sheer size, right? We keep hearing that data 8 has over 1,600 or so students in it every semester. And so, while it is designed to have no prerequisites, what we end up seeing is that many of the students in the course actually do have a lot of that background knowledge coming in. And so from spring 2021, 58% of students in data 8 had some sort of prior programming experience, and 40% of them had both some sort of prior programming experience and took a prior statistics course. Okay, so a significant portion of the students had some of this background before. And now that alone is not an issue. Where it sort of becomes an issue is when it comes to classroom climate, right? Put yourself in the shoes of someone who has never heard of a Jupyter notebook and thinks Python is a snake, right? You go into this big room with 1,000 other people who are all like, oh, this class is so easy. And that's very discouraging, right? Even though you can succeed in the course, right? The material was designed for anyone to be able to pick it up. It, sort of discourages you from wanting to pursue the course in the field further. And so the motivation behind Data 6 was to be an introduction to some of the ideas in Data 8, but in a much smaller, more intimate classroom environment. Okay, and so that was the pitch that was presented to me back in fall 2020. And I was sort of advised to develop a course that would, somewhat prepare students for Data 8. Again, not that it necessarily needed preparation because, it starts from the ground up, but, we wanted to create this classroom environment where we would bring in students who were somewhat interested in data science, but, weren't ready to commit to Data 8 and both give them the confidence they needed to succeed in Data 8 if they wanted to take it, and give them the skills they would need to succeed in Data 8 if they wanted to take it. And so that's sort of the idea behind Datasets.
While you're there,
Yeah.
can you repeat this question?
Sure.
How does the course you developed differ from Data 8?
Yeah, so as Deb showed us, we need to call her out.
It's all good.
If there are some people watching online, which is cool.
Okay. Yeah, so how does Data 6 differ from Data 8? Well, you can see for yourselves if you go to data6.org, you can see it. But the main difference is that Data 6 does not touch on statistics or inferential thinking at all, which is really what Data 8 is all about, right? It introduces computation, but really it's about how to use, your Jupyter notebook and how to use Python to, run some sort of statistical tests, right? That's like the heart of what Data 8 talks about. Data 6 focuses just on the computation part because we felt that that was the part that was, foreign to students, and that was the part that, was serving as a roadblock from students enrolling in Data 8. So Data 6 focuses only on computation and doesn't talk about any of the statistical ideas. Now, since it focuses on computation, it actually, at least in an earlier iteration, covered a bit more computation than students in Data 8 would see. So for instance, in Data 6, we talked about things like while loops or dictionaries, which they wouldn't necessarily see when they took Data 8, but talking about those ideas and reasoning about how they worked would help build up their computational thinking skills, which was a big goal in Data 6.
Okay, thanks, Serge. My next question is for Lisa. So in this new phase of course development, what are your learning goals for the students? Why do you see the need for this update from the version that Serge was just talking about? And how is the course different from the course you envisioned, different from the course that Serge taught?
Hi, I'm back. So to answer Deb's nicely posed question and to also address a lot of the goals that Suraj had mentioned, the new version of Data 6, as kind of suggested by the title of this panel, is Introduction to Computing with Data and Society. So the focus is still on being able to teach students the computing competency required for Data 8 that a lot of students are already coming in with in Data 8. However, as we know, and as CDSS has tried to do in part of its mission, data science is truly interdisciplinary. So we are getting a lot of students who are taking Data 8 who haven't seen computing, but are coming with a vast set of experiences from their personal backgrounds or from just other courses that they've taken on campus. So another one of the goals is to be able to kind of like see data in all these different types of courses that they may have been taking in, let's say, the behavioral and social sciences. And this is actually something that as we've been working with Tuskegee, we actually see this more and more, which is that it is true. Like when a lot of, let's say engineers or computer scientists think about the social scientists, or we think about the types of theory that are created, sometimes we forget that there's a lot of quantitative social scientists out there who all work with data. And so therefore, if one of the goals then, another one of the goals for data 6 is to be able to establish this belonging. That, you know, the data scientist is not just a computer scientist that happens to use existing data. The data scientist is someone who uses data for a particular application that they have domain knowledge in. So if we can kind of bring that to the forefront of data 6 and allow for conversation, allow for smaller groups of students to share their own experiences, that will be an accomplishment. So again, I think like kind of logistically, we're trying to keep this course small for the next few years, and hopefully it won't grow be like up to 1,000 people, because again, one of the goals is to be able to actually foster and to be able to say, hey, you belong in data science, and this is how we're going to actually empower you to be able to have these conversations.
Sorry for the awkward transition here. All right, my next question is for Vivian Carter. So yesterday we heard a lot about data 8, and today in one session we heard about data 100. And it was mentioned this morning by Associate Dean John De Niro that those core technical data science classes were co-developed by statistics and computer science faculty and continue to this day to be co-taught by them. For this new endeavor for data 6, we are involving faculty from computer science, statistics, behavioral social sciences, and the bioethics center at Tuskegee. And so my question for Vivian is, what do you hope these perspectives will accomplish in this course recreation?
Well, first of all, Deb, I want to thank you for the opportunity for us to be here with you. It has really been an exciting endeavor. I have to first recognize that this endeavor did not start with me. It actually started with a team, and they've been working on this since 2020. And it first started with computer science with Yasmin Redfish. And then then Mondoy was added, as well as 3 of our major deans, one in engineering, one in the College of Arts and Sciences, and the other in the School of Business. So we've been working with this idea and this concept and this relationship with Berkeley and dialoguing for about 2 years. And one of the things that I hope to see is that I know that you've been impressed and recognized what the students have been engaged in. We do utilize data and information and data sets, especially in the behavioral sciences. And that's our sociology, our psychology, the political science, the public health programs, even our bioethics. We utilize a lot of data sets, but sometimes we also recognize that there's a sense of invisibility when you're just gathering that data, and that there are areas and pockets that go missing. And we generally find them. One example is when we're talking about how we rolled out the whole vaccines, the screening for COVID. People forget, okay, you got to go through this portal. People forget that there are places, especially in rural communities, that don't have broadband. There are still places where people don't use computers, don't have them. But yet they have access to people who may have it, or they may not, but they still deserve to be recognized. And how do we count them? How do we include them? These are things that we bring from the behavioral science side and the application side. So I think that that's one of the things, the strength of Tuskegee, is that we know and we can identify those pockets. We recognize them because that's us. The other area is that by getting this exposure, that again, the experience and the tools, that again helps us in terms of the preparation of our students. Many times, and I will say this, many times our students come with the experience, and those experiences are because of grassroots programs in their communities. We have several young ladies that have come that have been a part of what we call Black Girls Code. So they've already experienced and had experience with coding and applying it in their communities. There are other young men in there that have come from what we call charter schools that provide that as well. So our kids are getting that background, many of them, but again, many of them are not, but they have the ability.
Thank you. And by the way, there are 13 Tuskegee students on our campus right now. They arrived 2 weeks ago. And Lisa's been working with them very closely. And they were just introduced to some projects that Mandoy, Yasmin, Lisa, and I were coming up with for them to work on this summer. And they are really excited about co-creating some of the discussions for Data6 this summer to be used next spring in our class. So I have one more question, which I'd like to ask all three of the panelists to answer in turn. And that's, what are your hopes for the students who take this course? What are some of the, well, it's two questions. What are some of the challenges that you have faced or that you foresee facing in developing this course? So Vivian, shall we go in reverse order? Do you want to start? Tell us about the hopes for the students taking this class and any challenges?
Sure. Well, my hopes for the students, again, is that they gain the skills and that they bring them back to the classroom and that they share them. We're creating a program where they will be putting part of a symposium that we put on really in the department that we put on every semester. And so they're going to be presenting that work as well. And they will be presenting at conferences as well. So the other part of that is that their sense of accomplishment, you know, that they can do this. One student kind of looked and thought, God, look how many students they have. But to recognize that, you know, they're just as capable. They're here because of their capability. The size of the classroom doesn't matter, it's about the knowledge. And I think our students recognize that. So that I'm very proud of.
I'll go next. I have a few hopes, some of which are in the learning goals. And just to repeat what Dr. Carter said about the sense of belonging in computer science and the sense of belonging in data science specifically, I think is something that is still kind of a challenge here at UC Berkeley, particularly because our classes are so huge. Another hope that I have is that is the kind of the larger impacts of this course beyond just the students who take this course at UC Berkeley and at Tuskegee University. I hope that kind of Data6 will be an example of a type of introductory computing course that can be used at various institutions as well. And so one of the things that we are keeping in mind as we develop our material, or we redevelop a lot of the material that Suraj has kindly put together last year, is how to share it with all of you. And so please stay tuned. Maybe in workshop 2023, we'll have a revamped version of how to actually share some of this material. But one of the challenges that I would say is actually something that we're experiencing right now with our development, which is that it is very interdisciplinary, and we're not trying to kind of like slot in behavioral science, and we're not trying to slot in context. We're trying to introduce all three of these things, or actually four of these things: computing, data, context, behavioral science, like that type of mental model all at the same time. And so therefore, we're trying to build we're trying to like use a lot of the knowledge and experience that Eric and the modules team and like Elias, who's talked a little bit, their experience with working with different departments across campus and with different faculty and different divisions, and to try and see how we can actually, capitalize on some of that experience to be able to actually develop a very successful course.
Right.
I don't really have that much to add. I think the prior panelists said, clearly stated the goals of the course and what the challenges of developing it would be. But, at Berkeley, at least, I think, a course like this is necessary to include, people who otherwise wouldn't sign up for courses like Data 8 in the broader data science ecosystem. I have a anecdote from someone who took the course last spring that I wanted to read to you, that that sort of, motivates to me why a course like this should be a permanent offering at Berkeley. The student said, "This was an amazing course for a non-STEM major such as myself to really feel comfortable jumping into Python. A class this small is such a rarity at Cal, especially for programming. It worked really well for me since I was mostly looking to just learn something new and challenge myself. But I also imagine this would be a great first step for someone wanting to continue with programming long term. It was free from all of the scary stereotypes that I had heard from my friends in Data 8 or the Intro CS courses. I would advise just trusting the process, honestly." I didn't, modify this. "I felt very incompetent at first, and while I'm still not that competent, I learned way more than I thought I could." And so, anecdotes like that are why I think we need a course like this, both at Berkeley, but also, just more broadly at all of our institutions.
Thanks, everybody. All right, thank you. Hopefully this has given you a bit of a flavor for what we're trying to accomplish with Data 6. And we've been trying hard at doing this. Catherine Carson in the very back, this was her brainchild. When was that? 3 years ago or 4 years ago? No one's mentioned it at this point? Was that a 4? Eric, okay, I know that you and I transitioned where I signed the papers to create the course, but that's all I did. I was just the rubber stamp. And one of the things that has not been mentioned so far is that this course, while focusing on or teaching programming, it also satisfies a social science breadth requirement for the university. And one of the things that's kind of been bothering us for the past couple of years is that we haven't seen that it has actually satisfied that breadth requirement. And so when we started to meet with the Tuskegee faculty, it was like, wow, this is a tremendous opportunity. Here's something that we have experience in and so far have not succeeded at. And our collaborating with our Tuskegee partners is a way that we could possibly create something new that has perspectives from voices other than sort of statistics and CS faculty, and in terms of this course for, as Lisa said, with these 4 pieces: data, context, computing, and social science. I'd like to open it up for questions. I've got 2. Eric, you're close by, so.
Well, did you mention the seed scholars angle?
No,
So-
that's not Data 6, but that's part of the research project. Do you want to hear Lisa talk about that?
No, I want to talk about the history of Data 6 being.
Oh,
seed
that
scholars in the
particular,
past.
yes, why don't you come up and talk about C?
Well, I can talk from here. I just wanted to say that an important part of the history was it's been taught over the past 3 summers as part of an initiative for equity and inclusion. That a group of students that come, this is based on the Meyerhoff scholars in University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which is a famous case of making a small cohort, giving extra support, and getting really great educational outcomes for underrepresented students. So Chan Zuckerberg Foundation has funded a set of these scholars. They're Regent scholars from underrepresented backgrounds. And so one of the things they were looking for was, what's that class that they're going to come to UC Berkeley and take in a small session and form the cohort? So they come in the summer and they get like a summer bridge treatment. They create a cohort. And they approached us and this is how, we got to this, they wanted it to satisfy our requirements. So that's how we got to it, satisfying a social science requirement. But separate from all this, this has been taught 3 different summer bridge sessions for 6 weeks, creating a cohort, and there's been great outcomes with those students, and those students have like reported that they really like this as a class. They're all different STEM majors, right? They're not CS or data science majors. They're all across STEM, but they, this, instead of it being a calculus class, which I think is what the Meyerhoff scholars did traditionally, historically, this is a class that like can help people that are going to a whole bunch of different STEM majors. So hopefully that collaboration will flourish and grow too as well. It's
Yeah.
another thread in this project.
Yeah, and while you're mentioning it, the 13 Tuskegee students who arrived 2 weeks ago will be enrolled in Data 6 with the Seed Scholars.
So that's another
And,
great
and
integration.
the head of the Seed Scholars came to Tuskegee back in March, where he got to meet the faculty and the students. And so we're pretty excited about that kind of collaboration going on with the Berkeley Seed Scholars and the Tuskegee Scholars. And yes,
I have 2 questions. Okay, I'm looking at your data on the Datasets website. I mean, given I don't have access to half of the things, but looking at some of the content, I see like the slides have a lot of programming.
Yep.
I don't see context. When you-
okay, well, you are looking at the old slide.
Yeah.
You wanna go
Yes.
back to this.
Yes, well, they're not posted yet. So, Lisa, do you want to address that? Or,
We just came up with this idea like a year ago. And so the new offering of Data 6 that will happen this summer will have some of that context. However, like I mentioned earlier, this is a process and we're still trying to learn a lot of it. So for this summer, we're going to be revamping a first unit within Data 6 to really have that integrated approach that I was talking about earlier. And it's going to start with Dr. Carter's experience in bioethics, as well, along with Dr. Stephen Shideke, who is the current head of the bioethics department at Tuskegee University. So that is the deliverable that we're hoping to have in the new Data 6, which will hopefully be published, in starting next week, which is when the course happens. And beyond that, we're hoping to use a lot of the Tuskegee Scholars material and project research that they're doing over the summer to start branching out to other units involving environmental justice, involving recidivism, gerrymandering, and all of these other contexts.
My second question, I emphasize what Dr. Carter mentioned, that it's important to read and to know that this students have the same capability as the other students.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, and with the assumption that data 8 was written without any prerequisites, so anyone can take it, why would you put them in Data 6 where they can take Data 8 and perhaps the support through the scholar program you have?
Mhm.
They can excel at the same course. Why would they be placed in a lower level course in order to succeed in Data 8? I'm listening to the
Yeah.
question.
That's a good question. And so I'm going to repeat it for the sake of the online. The question is, well, if Data 8 is already a course that should have no prerequisites, then why are we introducing another course, which is a prerequisite for Data 8? So I can answer part of this question, and I'm hoping that some of our panelists can answer the other part of it. But Data 6 will not be a required part of the data science major in the sense of, again, we are trying to keep it small, and we are trying to target the group that would benefit the most in terms of belonging and competency in computing and with the particular goal of data science. So it's not going to be a prerequisite, it won't be an official prerequisite. We're not trying to make the chain longer, particularly for, since our course does, or since our campus does have a lot of community college transfers, I don't think it makes sense to include it. However, we do think that it is necessary based on some of the data that Suraj just talked about. Maybe actually, Suraj, you might be best posed to discuss this.
Yeah, so I don't have the actual data, memorized. This was a year ago, but what I will say is I've spoken to every student who took the course, and that's one of the benefits when it's of size, 20 versus 200 or 2000. And I know from, speaking to them and from collecting weekly surveys from them that the majority of them would not have taken Data 8, right? And it's, because the course was advertised as being this like small personalized learning environment, that they were willing to sort of take the chance and sign up for it, right? It's not so much about the content, right? Because everyone can succeed in Data 8 content-wise. A lot of it is the learning environment, and many of them just wouldn't sign up for Data 8 because they would be one of 2,000, right? But being one of 20, for instance, many more students were okay.
Eric, could you put this on?
Yeah, I
please?
got it. Sorry about that.
I'd also like to try and answer the question. I think the other piece is that when students come in and they do not have a stat background or a CS background, and they're trying to learn statistics and computing principles all at the same time, even though there isn't a prerequisite, it can be a little overwhelming from students who are not coming from that sort of STEM background. And so, excuse me, this course was meant to fill a niche for students who are not sort of math computing types, but who have an interest in working with data from a social science perspective. And I just wanted to put this up here as this is one of the steps that we went through this spring was to think about the course. On the far left, there's like, what are all the computational topics that we want to cover in this course? And let's put them in. So the course that we designed, actually, we said, okay, let's break away from the traditional computer science course and the sequence of topics and how they're usually taught. We don't have to teach functions or while loops in the second week of the course. We can actually postpone that later. We want to lead with data. And so we can start with the concepts of an array and a data table and visualization to have students see what wonderful things they can do if they learn some programming. We actually rediscovered the wheel as we were doing that to see that actually Data 8 had made that same sort of set of sequence of topics. But the other thing is we looked at at data sources, and the idea that we want to expose students to government surveys, to geospatial data or data from multiple sources that they need to combine, that we want to expose them to community-led data sources and digital traces and open access and privacy. So we came up with a full matrix of computation, data source, ethics. So as we went down here, we had a review by Vivian and Dr. Shideke about the ethics topics and which ones could easily fit in with the different sources of data. The social science aspects as well. We met with Dave Harding from the Department of Sociology here. He shared with us his notes and his books. Then we cross-checked with Dr. Carter, who's the chair of sociology, to come up with this list of social science topics. And then lastly, the context piece that we were talking about is like, what kinds of data might we want to work with? So right now we're working with BRFSS, the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance Survey. And then we're looking into other sets of data like environmental hazards, the compass algorithm, recommender systems, et cetera, each sort of sliding in with these 4 big data sources, ethics, et cetera. So we are working really hard to do that kind of integration. And we think it's a good course that doesn't have to just lead to Data 8 as well. And I guess we'll take one more because we have 4 o'clock. Yes,
Yeah, so
maybe 2 more.
yeah, I had the same concern because we are in community college.
Uh-huh.
We decided that we want to have an open door, no prerequisites, so anybody can walk in. And same concept that the students might not be able to reach up the data 8 strong.
Right.
But what I find out is that data 6 and data 8 have a lot of overlap. So if they pass data 6 and they want to go to data 8, it's like 50% of it is almost the same.
Right.
So my question, that's like what I asked before.
Right.
Is if you take the data 6,
Right.
what can they do to kind of, can I take these 2 courses to be data 8 or?
Yeah,
We don't wanna have the same-
that's a really good question. It's sort of like, where do they go next? I can have, what my first answer to that is, we haven't exactly figured that out yet. I think there are many possibilities out there. In terms of developing sort of alternative pathways to then take one of the courses there was the programming class. That's the program structures that's specifically aimed at data science people. They could take that, right? They could then take a stat only course. And then right now, to take Data 100, you actually, there's an alternative class, which is a stat class, which they could take that plus Data 6, plus their computing. And so we haven't exactly figured out all those pathways, and we do need to figure that out. And there was one, I don't, yeah, did you have a quick one?
Yeah, it's quick. So we've done something very similar in our institution. And the question I have for you is, who's teaching the course?
Oh,
Are
good
you
question.
training CS?
Who is teaching this course?
Teaching social sciences. Yes, are you teaching? How are you handling?
Very good question. In fact, that's why I think Suraj would say, I did not feel capable to bring in the social science applications. And that's kind of why it's sort of not quite made it. And a lot of social scientists, while they might be computational, quantitative scientists, they're not familiar with teaching like computational thinking, right? They can solve lots of problems programming with data, but it's a whole nother thing to be able to teach it. You know, ideally, we'd have a co-taught between a computer scientist and a quantitative social scientist. And I think that's TBD at this point, in part because it's a small course, unlike the really large ones where you could justify co-teaching. But we don't know yet. This is very much new. Thank you for the great question.
Thank you, panel.